today we're going to explore what that looks like. Part of it is the why. Why are we teaching math? And I think everybody here knows that. Math is an important skill both in high school and college. It's essential that kids get to fluency in numeracy by 4th grade. It's essential that they have a basic understanding of algebra and how it plays out. And then beyond algebra, there needs to be great choice, in my view, and I'd be curious to hear other people's views, in what math kids actually take in high school. We have a traditional calculus track, which is important for STEM careers. It's not serving kids of color particularly well. It's not serving low-income kids particularly well, so we invite the calculus folks into the problem space. But we also need to be thinking about the way math plays out in other subjects, data science, statistics, modeling, geospatial reasoning. So there's just an enormous amount to be excited about. And I will say I'm excited about math, even though in 3rd grade I was 145 pages behind, and Sister Bernadette had to tutor me for the remainder of the year. The fact that I am at the Gates Foundation, my name is Bob Hughes, and I'm director of K-12. The fact that I'm actually doing this, I'm pretty sure Sister Bernadette is turning wherever she is, because that's probably not something she would like to do. So what I'm going to do is ask each member of the panel to introduce themselves and just talk a little bit about math, why they're excited about it, and one thing they're working on in their own work. We're going to try to be as informal as possible, so if you have questions, don't wait for question and answer. Just put your hand up, because we want to make this a collaborative, communicative. We're communicative, you're communicative. We want to share that experience together. So, Lacey, can I start with you?
Sure.
Please, go.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lacey Robinson, President and CEO of UnboundEd and Chair of the Board CORE, our subsidiary.
I am Leyla Bravo, and I am the Senior Director of Partnerships and Communications at the English Learners Success Forum.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Johnson, and I lead an organization called Teaching Lab. Our mission is to fundamentally shift the paradigm of teacher professional learning, and we love math and believe everybody can be a math person.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danika Rux, and I am the Deputy Chancellor for the Division of School Leadership in New York City Public Schools. And what I do is support and supervise 45 superintendents across New York City.
That's a tough job. I live in New York. I know what that looks like. So talk a little bit about math. Why do you think math is important, and what is one thing you're working on in math that is relevant at a conference that's looking at AI, tech, and the intersection between technology and classroom instruction? Why don't we start with you?
Why am I excited about math?
Yes.
Why not? You know, I think for far too long, math has been the other thing that we haven't really quite paid much attention to in education. And so now is the time. So that's what really excites me about math, knowing that as a system that we are laser-like focused on math achievement for students. In New York City right now, 49.9% of our students are proficient. That means more than half of our students are not. And so why am I excited? Because this is the time, we have the resources to do it, and it's about time that we pay the attention that it deserves.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, so we are honored and privileged also to support the New York City Math Initiative. So we actually provide coaches to hundreds of schools in New York City that are implementing Algebra 1. It's illustrative math. And we're super excited about math and this initiative because, as Danika said, it's been a minute. So in New York City, for years, nobody made centralized decisions about curriculum or really about instruction. Everything was pushed down to the school level. So I'm in awe of this leadership because I used to work there too, and it's very hard to do what Danika is doing. And what we see, though, in classrooms is that teachers really want to do this work. We see students engaged, but there's a gap between the desire that teachers have and the skills that they have to hold every single student accountable to grade level standards. So that's the work that we do. We are incredibly idealistic at Teaching Lab. We believe it's 100% possible, but what school systems need to do is invest in the support, the individualized coaching for teachers to make this happen. One research statistic that people don't know a lot about is that teacher coaching is one of the most evidence-based interventions in education. It's not just good for teachers. We know that it equates to improvements in student learning. And so we're really excited to be a part of the New York City initiative and also do this across the nation because we think it's going to make a real difference in the lives of kids.
Why don't we just keep going down the line?
Well, why math? Math is, I'm a math person. Everyone's a math person, but I have a special relationship with math. So I'm a refugee from Nicaragua. We came to this country. My dad would teach me algebra for fun in the summer, so to give a little context about that. And I think one of the things that I'm excited about, especially, is giving access to our multilingual learners. 20 years, like, things have not changed for our multilingual learners. The NAEP scores tell everything, right? We're looming 2 to 4% proficiency in math in 8th grade for multilingual learners. And what I know to be true from my own experience is that is not because of the students. And so I'm excited for a change. I'm excited for innovative solutions to make sure that our multilingual learner students have the access they deserve.
So what makes me excited about math starts with a personal and then to professional. It wasn't until my freshman year in college that I was informed that mathematics is my ancestral right. I did not realize that I came from a people that actually invented mathematics, that used mathematics to shift and change the world and to tell about futuristic findings. And so by the time I got to college, I pretty much was told that I was not a math person, that I wasn't worthy of learning math, and that I should just go on about my reading ELA subject. But I went to a HBCU where they refused to allow me to take that narrative and to run that narrative through the rest of my life. So professionally, our goal at UnboundEd and CORE is to create an environment where grade level, engaging, affirming, meaningful instruction is going on for all students. That all students understand that it is their inherited right to be a mathematical thinker, and that all students understand that it is our collective responsibility that they leave our environments prepared for college, career, and beyond.
Whew, I'm glad the Gates Foundation is focused on math. And it is a shift for us. We have done lots of things over the years, some good, some bad, some worked, some didn't, and we're pretty transparent about that. But I'm excited about this math focus because of a lot of what folks have been talking about on this panel already. But one of the questions I have is, our strategy is pretty simple. It's looking at curriculum, aligned professional learning, and then the leadership necessary to ensure that there's an integrated system to support teachers in real time. And we're here at a conference of technologists, and I think we're all excited about what's possible with digital. But one of the elephants in the room is the fact that edtech hasn't had as much impact as many would have predicted. Why do you think that is, and what are you thinking about in your own work to try to address that? Want to just go back?
Yeah.
Or we can alternate. Let's alternate.
So I want to know if edtech is truly trying to answer the question. And the question really is that, are we trying to prepare our society, our students, for future, or are we trying to push across products for product's sake? Are we trying to utilize our educators as consumers, or do we count them as prosumers? We are out of the information age and into the intellectual age, but are we really trying to create intellect in schools, and do the products that they put out support that?
Love it.
Well, you asked for it.
I'm not a tech entrepreneur. So, go ahead.
I think that, similar to what Lacey said, it's like, what are we trying to solve here? And at the end of the day, I think that folks thought that tech would be like this silver bullet. And it is not tech that solves problems in education. It is people that solve problems in education. And if the people have a deficit mindset about our students, then those are the products we will get. Or are we going to move from a place of, like, for instance, multilingual learners have all that they need to be successful? That's a very different product you're about to create, right? And so instead of, oh, they need help to access a language, no, they can figure out the language, right? They can figure out the language and they can learn math at the same time. Are you creating the right product to amplify those strengths?
All right, I got a question. Do you know what the average number of tools that a district adopts every year? It's over 1,000. They have over 1,000 edtech tools that they use and pay for. So to me, one of the main reasons why we haven't realized the potential of some technology is because of something we call incoherence. Adopting all of those products that falls on the back of teachers and school leaders to try to figure out how to use them. When we go to schools in New York City, we'll see schools adopting 2 different versions of the same curriculum, a digitized version, a print version. We'll see them using a different platform for practice, another platform for homework, another platform for assessments. And I've seen teachers sort of masterfully use all of these tools at the same time, but it's very complicated and it's hard for teachers and students to do. So when you have that sort of fracturing within the instructional core, within classrooms, I think it becomes a giant challenge for teachers to implement. Additionally, does anyone want to guess what is the average percentage of students that use edtech products at the dosage required to get an impact? Anyone know? It is 5%. Yeah. So you may have read an article, it was written by Lawrence Holt recently. So there is something called the 5% problem in education. So it's only 5% of students that use edtech tools at the dosage required to get an impact. So this is another reason why the edtech tools are not meeting the promises that they make. This means that really what companies should be doing, and anybody working in technology, is they should be sitting in classrooms with teachers and students and actually figuring out what they want to do. And I cannot tell you how rare that is, and I think it's due to another market dysfunction, which is that companies sell to school districts, they don't sell to teachers, students, and families.
And Sarah, I'm wondering that 5%, if you disaggregate that, what that 5% looks like. Because you talk about, forget a digital divide, there's digital deserts. So the reality is that those tools, who are they really being put forth to?
And that's what I was going to speak on, access. That's also an issue, and that's one that we deal with in New York City. High percentage of students in temporary housing, students who live in deserts where they don't have access to Wi-Fi. And so you may have the technology, but if you don't have access to the technology, you're not going to get the impact. One of the things we did in New York City was we subscribed to edtech solution, and we were very intentional in ensuring that we had people on district teams who were monitoring for implementation to ensure that it was being used at the dosage that is required. And that proved to be very successful, and we saw significant gains. But again, it took us being very intentional in having people who were actively monitoring that, looking at the data weekly, having conversations with teachers about the data that they were looking at and how they use that data to then develop lessons in their classrooms, not just using it as an additive, but being part of the instruction and the curriculum that was being used in the classroom.
Yeah, no, I just want to underscore the inequity that exists. If you look at California adoptions over the last couple of years around English language learners and new curriculum, you'll see that places with high need and high percentage of English language learners have not been adopting new curriculum for 3 or 4 years. And it's not because they're sitting on their hands waiting for the new California framework to roll out, because other people are buying curriculum all the time. It's because that curriculum is not designed to address the needs of English language learners. So I think we have big challenges ahead as we try to think of product that actually fits the needs of young people. So you're all in the trenches. You're all detail people. I know you. And I think we can talk up here. Give me 1 or 2 use cases that you would challenge the technologists in this room to solve. Like, what are the pain points in the existing system? And preview, the second question will be, in 10 years, what do you want the system to look like as a futurist? But pain points in the existing system that you think technology could knock out.
I mean, we could you want to start with teachers? You want to start with students? I mean,
I want you to start where you want to start.
okay, so I think that a lot of times when we're having this conversation about technology and how it gets used and all the products that are coming out, particularly in education, the one pain point source is that they don't go to the actual prosumer that has to use it. So how about starting with the teachers and what we need to solve for them? I think it's absurd that a teacher spends 8-9 hours on a Sunday afternoon doing lesson planning when you have doctors that can go in and speak into a microphone and the AI spits out what the patient's, what their diagnosis is, the pharmaceutical aids that they can use. It's like, why is it that in some professions, the technology can help amplify and make those professional lives easier, more accessible, but when it comes to teachers, it's always about, well, here are the tools that you have to use to add into what you're already doing. So I think that thinking about what can we do in service of teachers rather than to teachers is one place we can start.
And around teachers, right, like we also have to realize that teachers are in a system that's asking for like fast data and fast things. And the thing that teachers are specifically positioned to be able to do, especially for multilingual learners, is really analyze both what multilingual learners can do mathematically and in their language, right? And so facilitating, having technology that facilitates their ability to look at student work, to see the different representations of mathematical thinking is incredibly critical. And the other thing that I think is problematic is, and I think about my own daughter in this, right? She is a beautiful bilingual child in a public school. And oftentimes, right, they're like, we're differentiating by putting her in a computer, by herself in a corner, right, to learn more, right? I'm like, that's not what I want, right? I know too much. It's part of my problem. And at the end of the day, what we really want is we want to actually increase connection between students, between teachers, between families, between communities. And that's the kind of technology we need so that students can actually get the math and connect with each other.
Thank you. Can I say it's really a privilege to be on this panel with so many people talking about teachers because a lot of the time people are not thinking about teachers and they're not asking the teachers what their opinion is or how we can make their lives easier and more effective. So I used to be a high school science teacher just up the road from here in Oakland, California. And I was the type of teacher that got up early. I went to CVS to buy my own science supplies. I created my own curriculum. I stayed up late, like practicing experiments. And what's really sad to me is that I think so little has changed about the teaching profession. There was an article that came out recently that said the teaching profession is in the worst state it's been in 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's looking at many different measures, including perceptions of the teaching profession, right? So when I think about use cases, I'm thinking about that fracturing that is happening within the instructional core. Like, let's get into classrooms and actually see what's going on. And per Lacey's point, like, I think we need almost like to do ethnographic research with teachers, follow them around, see how difficult it is for them to do their work, and then create technology that can make that easier. So a few examples. Our curriculum that we have, which we love, okay? We're a curriculum-based coaching organization. It has about 150% of the content that you need over the course of a year, okay? It's also really difficult to unite data that you get about students and determine things like how to put them into small groups and what students should be doing in those small groups so that they can access the grade level content. These are things that teachers spend hours and hours trying to figure out. Our coaches coach them to do it, but you could imagine that you could unite student data and recommendations for teachers about what to do in a way that's a lot more seamless and coherent and a lot better for kids.
And I would add students having agency over their own data.
It's nice too.
Having access to their own data, being able to look on a platform based on how you've been doing and seeing what are the things that you're doing well and what are the things that you need additional support with, and having easy access to it on your own.
Yeah, that is radical. And you know, the other thing that I think a lot about is schools have hidden complexity. Just thinking about things like homework. The average teacher spends 5 hours a week on homework. If she or he is a middle school teacher, they have 90 students. That means they're spending 3 minutes a student a week giving that young person feedback. And we know you learn math by doing math. So the idea that you're not really getting feedback on the work you're submitting feels like a broken contract with students, and it feels like a giant challenge for teachers. Or think if you give an end of the week's test, you have 90 tests to score over the weekend because you need to get them back to a young person to have real impact. So I think the hardest thing we can do is figure out how to get a young person to understand fractions. But there are a lot of easier, less sexy things we can do in schools that equip teachers who are in the best place to solve that, to have a better shot at doing that and relieve them of a lot of the time they're spending on administrivia across the school. So focus on non-sexy problems as much as the kind of super sexy problem, and I think you'll really get some interesting feedback.
And can I just add,
Yeah.
I think it's important that ed tech companies are engaging students in conversations around what they need from them as well. I think that that's really important, and that's often something that is missed, not having the conversation with the actual students to hear from them. That's how I learned that having a tool that they can access their own information is important to students.
Absolutely.
That's from students. When I visit schools, I hear them asking for things like that, for resources like that. And I think that that's often missed. So I just encourage you all to have those conversations with students.
Yeah.
Come on, Lacey, I hear you.
well,
I see
and I
there's
was-
something there.
Yeah, because I think the other piece of it is that we can also use this technology to sort of save or to help us gain momentum in the areas in education that have been so stagnant. You know, so I'm gonna use a word that we beat to death, but I do believe there is a possibility that we can engage in culturally relevant instruction, and we can use technology to do that. If we can train technology to be culturally relevant and responsive, we can train technology to offer up curriculum and materials so that the students see themselves and are authentically engaged. We can use technology so that students understand that algebraic thinking and that calculus that they're being asked can be applied in entrepreneurship and all across different sectors. And so I think that's the other push, is that I hear a lot about there's AI, there's technology out there that's diversified. You know, I kind of crinkle my nose at that because we as a society don't understand what culture is. So why should I trust that you as a programmer is gonna know what culture is? So I think that's the other piece that we have to dig down into. We have to consider the students, the student voice, but we also have to consider the global majority that will be accessing this information.
Yeah, when we look at data pools, we frequently just see a reflection of ourselves with our warts, our challenges. So one of the things we have to be thinking about is, you know, I don't want to use a Disney cartoon, but we got to look a little bit better, and technology has to make us look better. And if we just rely on status quo, it's not going to be helpful. So, and I'm going to turn it over to you all in a minute, so get ready for to ask questions. But I'm going to do two things. One, I want to talk about the future, because we're all skittish about talking about the future. In your fantasy version of technology, describe what a student experiences in a classroom, or maybe that classroom doesn't exist, or maybe that teacher is doing something that teacher isn't doing right now. Just give us a sense of what you're dreaming about in this moment in time when so much feels like it's in flux or uncertain.
Well, I'm not dreaming, I saw it. I went to Abu Dhabi
Please.
and Dubai a few weeks ago, and I was flabbergasted. First of all, they control the weather, science. They do cloud seeding. They stop it from raining, and they cause it to rain. When the day they caused it to rain, there was a message that went off across their cell phones that said, it's gonna flood today. You might wanna stay at home and work from home, and you might want your students to stay and work from school from home. Oh, and by the way, as your student is working through their assignment, their teacher is receiving information on how well they did in that assignment so they can better prepare for them when they arrive for school next day once the flood has receded. They have flying cars, robots that talk to you. They have labs where they're studying. I mean, we laugh at it, but it's the truth. The future is there. And I sat there and I thought, oh my God, my own children, my own godkids are now light years behind because we in this nation haven't made up our mind that as an entire society, we have got to educate the masses. It's not red, blue, black, white. If you want to be in this game, you have to bring the masses up to be intellectual thinkers, mathematical believers, and literate. And so I was at the Future, Bob, and I have to tell you, we ain't there.
I'm going on your next trip.
I mean, here's the thing that I envision. We at ELS, we know what the research says. We know how to create these incredible mathematical classrooms. We know how language and content, right? Like we have our whole guidelines on all the research around what it means to create this incredible classroom for multilingual learners, for diverse students, for everyone. And yet, we don't have technological tools. Oftentimes, we have technological tools that amplify bad practices. And so what I want to start seeing is edtech tools actually aligning to research, aligning to what we already know to be true. And that isn't a tall order there, right? It's like all the research is there. Don't try to sell something, right? And the other future is teachers actually having time and space to look at student work. Again, not a hard sell there. And no more lunch duty, no more recess duty. Like, I know it's really granular, but this is the only, this is one of the few countries that doesn't give teachers time and space. That's right. And I mean, treat teachers as the professionals that they are, right? Because the nuanced work, right? We should be setting teachers up to be able to do the nuanced work of analyzing that language, that content that is there.
If you haven't learned by now, I'm kind of the nerdy ed research person in the group. And so statistically, like what you said is totally right. The United States gives teachers the least amount of time to prepare and to learn compared to every other nation. So that is like that. It's not simple, right? Like the amount of things that we make teachers do, the amount of time we make them fight with a copy machine to get basic resources. It's a big deal. So for the future, I think we have a science of reading movement where people are like, definitely every single kid should leave this school being able to read, and we're very far from that. We need to have the exact same goal for math. We need to say every single student is going to leave our school system being able to do math, high-level math, algebra, math that is going to allow them to succeed and do whatever they want to do in their lives. What I see in schools is some pretty ingrained complacency. People are happy when they go from like 10% proficiency to 20% proficiency in the school. Okay, and we're happy, like sometimes it's a big deal, right? But that is not enough. And that's why I appreciate what Danika's doing, right? Like we have to say, that is not the goal, and it's not acceptable. Every single kid who leaves this school system, they've been here for a long time, kindergarten to 12th grade. They need to leave being able to do math that is gonna allow them to access like the highest paying jobs in this nation. The highest paying jobs in this nation require math. That's the other thing that bothers me. I hate these articles that come out, these op-eds that are like, kids don't need to learn algebra. Yes, they do if they want access to a certain type of wealth. So I just want like the mindset to change and the complacency to change. And then since I'm the teacher person, we need to invest in teachers to help make this happen, even if we have the best technology in the world. I think in the future, technology will make it better. I think it can make it better for teachers if we really listen to them and improve their workflow. But without teacher coaching and support, we're not going to be able to meet that 100% goal.
Access. It's that simple for me. All students having access to the tools that are out there. And It doesn't depend on what zip code you live in. It doesn't depend on who's your principal and how they're using their money. It doesn't depend on that. I envision all students having access to the technology.
Amen. So I've always wanted to be either Donahue or Oprah. You decide which one I can be. But I'm going to go into the audience. This is something I've always wanted to do. It's very exciting. Put your hands up.
So I heard Leyla talk earlier about like the deficit mindset. And I'm curious if any of you have seen success on development and growth around what I like to call it, like the deficit skill set when it comes to math. The skill set where like I got a fourth grader that's at second grade level, so I'm only giving them second grade work, even though like the actual skill set should be that I'm giving you fourth grade work and I'm giving you the scaffold so that you can do this lesson today. Like, what are the things that you've seen to help like identify the deficit skill set moves in math, and where have you seen success in eradicating some of those practices?
I think it starts with creating an environment in our schools where we start telling the truth and allowing educators to tell the truth. So I say this to leaders and teachers all the time. I double dog dare you to walk in your staff room and ask your teachers, particularly teachers that are teaching mathematics, if they believe they're math people. Let's just start with that. And how much they understand the procedural and the conceptual. I've gotten into arguments with high school teachers who tell me, I don't need to know the conceptual. I made it this far with the procedural. Listen, there are engineers that are out here. I went to college with people who went through engineering programs that said, I don't need to know the conceptual, I know the procedural. So we have to start being real with our educators and creating environments where they can raise their hand and say, I teach fifth grade math and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Anybody else? Burning answer? We'll go to someone else. There's a double dog dare under each one of your chairs. Where else are we? There we go.
That's exactly right.
Hey guys, so my name is Sunny. I am the co-founder of a company called Tutero. We are building a maths co-teacher, and we're really trying to help solve some of the problems that you guys have highlighted. We're trying to help teachers save time by building engaging lesson plans, by doing assessments where we can automatically mark them, where we can allow teachers to create streamed worksheets. And we're working with a lot of teachers right now trying to refine the product to their needs. But one problem we're facing is around the education side. How can we actually help teachers learn about our tool and learn how to use our tool so that they can then save time with our platform?
Who wants to take it?
I could take it. I think that you need a really strong cycle of getting feedback from teachers. I think there is so much effort put into trying to get teachers to use things as opposed to designing with them and engaging in an iterative process, so you don't need to do all that work to get them to use it. To me, the radical thing that I say to my team is if a teacher says they don't like it, that's the answer. It doesn't mean, right, that you don't still try to get evidence into practice. But if they say they don't like it, that's the answer. That means you need to reframe the way that you're putting that in front of them. Because if it is useful to them, they will use it. So that's it.
Anybody else?
I'd also say iterative feedback from students. I think there is there is a little bot that's called COBI, C-O-B-I, out of ISAT, and that little bot sits and listens to student discussions. However, the student so they ask the students, "Hey, what do you want this bot to do and not do?" And the students were like, "It can't tell on me," right? Like super student response. But one of the things that they listened and they said, it will only share when the students set their own community agreements, and then it will only share when those community agreements have been met, right? And so that collaborative piece of math, right, where you have to work with others to solve hard problems, that is part of it, right? And you're also analyzing language along with it. Like it's really brilliant, but that was developed with students.
Okay. I'm in the space and I'm thinking about
a single thing. What are the unintended consequences of software designers who are not educators? And how does that show up where everyone gets to believe that they are an educator because they know an educator or because their kids are in schools? And then they create programs that don't necessarily meet the needs of educators and then ask educators to give them feedback on how to make their programs better with limited time.
It's the same.
Resources.
It's the same unintended response of the men who created the mammogram. I was trying to think of another example, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. It wasn't until women stepped in that we were like, you might need to shift this a little bit. So I think that's huge, right? And I think that goes back to what we were all saying in terms of like, we have always done things to the edusphere and not with them.
We've been to this rodeo before, right? Like 10 years ago, everybody said that like platforms were going to change education, and it was like not about content. And then around the same time, everybody was obsessed with personalized learning, and they had all these kids like on computers, and that just further atomized learning, and we cut out discourse and right? Like the same thing could happen with Gen AI. I'm not a techno-optimist at all, but I do think Gen AI could be different than some of those other sort of tech hype movements. But if we're not sitting there with educators and students, we're just going to repeat the same problems that we already know have happened before.
And I think it's important not to engage stakeholders at all points of the development as well as the implementation as well, so that you have feedback loops and you're improving and you're making changes as you're going. So it's not just here's, we engaged you at the beginning and here's the product and now go. But what are the points when you bring everyone back together and you're assessing how it's going, what improvements need to be made? I think it's really important to just have that as an ongoing part of the process.
So we're going to do one final thing, which is we're going to all ask you a collective question that you will not have a chance to answer. Welcome to Brave New World. But we are going to ask you a question, and we hope you think about it. So I'm going to start with this game. Eric is here from Ed Reports. Eric has been working for a long time to make sure that curriculum materials are aligned with Common Core standards. And the reason we think that's so important is the power that consumers have to make demands on technology. What do you need to make demands on technology to ensure that it addresses the needs of your students? And what do you need to stop people buying 1,000 tools that have almost no research basis, full stop? What do you need to do that? How do we aggregate demand around quality? That's your question.
My question is, while we're all oogling and eyeing over artificial intelligence, what are you doing to ignite and propel authentic intelligence in your communities? From your teachers to your parents to your students. So while we're waiting for artificial intelligence to come in and scoop us up, what are you doing around that authentic intelligence that's lacking?
My mother was a teacher for 20 years, and she said, I need chalk and I need a chalkboard, and I can teach kids, right? Like, things are tools. Calculator was a tool, right? Everybody was like, oh God, a calculator, now nobody's gonna do math thinking. That's not true. It is a tool. How do you utilize that, right? But I think it whittles down, especially with edtech, to three, like, I obviously was a teacher, to ABCs. Start with the assets of our students, go beyond things like translations and actually look at the research that's out there and make sure it is coherent, right? Teachers have 1,000,001 decisions that they are making each day. Make that easier. Make it aligned to the core curriculum. Make sure that it is, all the systems are in place, and I mean, I said it before, but like, no, not lunch duty. Like, stop. Give teachers the time they need to do the great work they can do.
All right, my question is, if you are not currently teaching math, could you pick up a math lesson? You can go get one, OER one. Go pick up an illustrative math lesson, a Eureka squared lesson. Go get one. Read it. Could you read it? Is a question. Okay. Could you read it and then think about how would you teach it? And I think like doing more things like that could bridge the gap between teachers and the ed tech developers and just everybody in this room who is potentially not in a classroom right now. And so my question is sort of like, how do we develop the collective empathy to actually design for educators and students in a way that's gonna really meet that 100% goal of every student leaving our schools being excellent in math?
My question is simple: readiness. How do we get everyone ready? Teachers, school leaders, system leaders, how do we get everyone ready? A lot of people are just stuck, and how do we get them unstuck and ready to implement, to explore, to just dive in, to be excited about it? Readiness. How do we just get people ready?
Let's give a hand to the panel, please.